"There won't be a divorce," my wife said, her voice cold as ice. "I just need one night to prove I'm still desirable." She walked out, convinced I'd wait patiently for her to crawl back. But while she was chasing validation, I was planning the downfall that would strip away everything she held dear. I used to think betrayal was something that happened to other people. The sort of thing you read about in magazines, scandals, affairs, dramatic splits. Not the kind of thing that touched people like me and Emily. We met when we were both 22, fresh out of college, starting in the same Manhattan investment firm. Even back then, Emily stood out. She was brilliant, disciplined, and ambitious in a way that made everyone take notice. I admired her drive. She admired my willingness to work just as hard. For years, that common ground kept us connected. We married in our late 20s. By then, she'd moved into corporate finance at a Fortune 500 company. I stayed in investment banking. Together, we built a reputation as a power couple, people who knew how to win and weren't afraid to sacrifice for it. We bought a condo in Tribeca. We traveled when our schedules allowed. We invested in each other's successes. Or so I thought. Looking back, there were signs Emily wasn't as content as she pretended to be. The way she avoided any conversation about slowing down. The dismissive tone when I suggested a vacation that didn't involve networking. The nights she came home late and acted irritated if I asked questions. But at the time, I rationalized everything. Work was demanding for both of us. We were under pressure to perform. And Emily had always been independent. She valued her freedom, and I respected that. Until the night she came home and told me with no hint of shame that she needed to spend the night with another man. It was a Thursday. I remember that detail because I'd come home early, hoping we could finally have dinner together without her taking work calls. She walked in carrying her laptop bag, set it down, and went straight to pour herself a glass of wine. She didn't even say hello. I watched her, trying to read her mood. After a long silence, she finally turned to me. "There's something I need to say," she began, her voice flat as if she were delivering a quarterly report. "Okay," I said slowly, bracing myself for bad news about her job. She looked directly at me. "I've been feeling stuck. Like I don't know who I am anymore. So I'm going out tonight. I'm meeting someone." I stared at her, thinking I'd misheard. Meeting someone? For what? Her expression didn't change. To see if I'm still desirable. I waited for her to laugh, to admit it was some twisted joke. But she didn't. "You're serious?" I said, my voice low. She nodded. "Mark, it's not about you. It's about me. I need to know I still have options." "You're telling me you're going to cheat?" I said, incredulous. "And you expect me to be fine with it?" She sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "I'm being honest. Isn't that what matters? I don't want a divorce. I'm not leaving you. I just need one night to feel like I'm not invisible." Invisible. That was the word she used, as if all the years we'd built together meant nothing. "Emily," I said carefully, "if you walk out that door, you're ending this marriage whether you admit it or not." She looked past me, her gaze fixed on some point behind my shoulder. "I'm not discussing this anymore." I felt something in me break. Maybe it was the part that still believed she respected me. Without another word, she turned and walked into the bedroom. I heard drawers opening, the soft clicks of hangers. She wasn't even trying to hide it. When she emerged again, she had a small overnight bag slung over her shoulder. "You're really doing this," I said quietly. Her jaw tightened. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Then she walked to the door, opened it, and paused. For a moment, I thought she might look back. She didn't. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed felt absolute. I sat down because my legs wouldn't hold me. My thoughts were a jumble: rage, disbelief, a hollow ache I couldn't name. I tried to imagine what kind of person could look their spouse in the eye and calmly declare they were going to sleep with someone else. But the answer was obvious. Someone who believed she was untouchable. Someone who thought no matter what she did, I'd still be there. In that moment, I understood I'd spent years loving a version of Emily that only existed in my imagination. The real Emily was someone who valued her ego more than our marriage. The realization hurt more than anything she could have confessed. For a long time, I didn't move. I stared at the spot where she'd stood, replaying her words. "I don't want a divorce. I just need to know I still have options." When the numbness finally gave way to something sharper, I stood and picked up my phone. There was only one person I trusted to help me figure out what to do next. I called Marcus. He answered immediately. "Hey, everything okay?" "No," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. "Emily's gone. She's out meeting someone. She says it's for one night." Marcus didn't respond at first. I heard a slow exhale on the other end. "What do you want to do?" he asked finally. I looked around the apartment, our life together reduced to a collection of things that suddenly felt meaningless. "I want to make sure she understands exactly what she's thrown away," I said. Marcus's voice was calm, but I could hear the edge beneath it. "I'll help you." As I ended the call, I felt something harden in me. The shock was gone. The sadness, too. All that was left was purpose. She thought I'd sit here waiting for her to come back, to forgive her because she was honest. But she was about to learn there was nothing honest about betrayal. And there was nothing more dangerous than a man who had nothing left to lose. When the door closed behind Emily, I stood for a long time in the quiet. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. The only thing I felt was a cold certainty that everything between us had ended the moment she decided her need for validation was more important than her commitment. I picked up my phone again and called Marcus. He didn't ask if I was sure. He knew me well enough to understand that I never acted out of impulse. If I was calling him now, it meant I'd already made up my mind. "You want me to start tonight?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to know everything she's been hiding. Every account, every deal, every trace she's left that could expose her. She thinks she's too careful to get caught. Then she's already made her biggest mistake," he said. While Marcus got to work, I moved around the apartment, putting away the things she'd left behind. Her laptop bag, her phone charger, a scarf she'd dropped near the door. Small things, but they made it clear she fully intended to come back and carry on as if nothing had happened. I wasn't going to let that happen. 2 hours later, Marcus sent me a message. "Need to show you something. Can you meet?" I agreed and met him in his office, a small suite he used when he wasn't working from home. He had a stack of printed reports waiting on the desk. "Emily's been clever," Marcus began. "She keeps most of her money in joint accounts with you, but there's a pattern of withdrawals over the past 5 years. Small enough to avoid scrutiny. She routes them through a Delaware LLC registered in her maiden name." "How much?" "Almost 200,000. I looked at the numbers, feeling more disgust than surprised. "You think her firm knows?" "Not yet," Marcus said. "But if we submit this documentation to their compliance department, it won't stay quiet long. She's also been using her corporate card for personal expenses. That's a clear violation of policy." I nodded. "Send it anonymously." "You sure?" "Yes." He tapped his keyboard. "Done." When I left, the city felt different, colder, like it belonged to other people now. But I felt no regret. Emily had chosen her path. I was simply helping her reach the end of it faster. The next morning, she still hadn't come home. I didn't call her. I didn't want her explanations. By early afternoon, the first fallout began. I knew because Marcus texted me again. Compliance flagged her transactions. "She'll know soon." I went back to the apartment, waited. Around 7 in the evening, the door opened. Emily walked in like nothing had happened. She set down her overnight bag and looked at me, assessing whether I was going to explode. "I'm back," she said, her tone measured. I didn't reply. She studied my face, searching for signs of anger or pain. But there was nothing left to find. "Look," she began. "I know you're upset, but I told you the truth. I didn't sneak around. That has to count for something." I didn't answer. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Mark, say something. You did what you wanted," I said evenly. "Now you get to deal with what comes next." She exhaled, frustrated, and walked past me into the bedroom. I listened as she unpacked, humming to herself as though the night had been an ordinary date. The following morning, I left before she woke up. I went to my office and cleared out the rest of my personal files, bank statements, insurance policies, legal documents. I changed every password on every account. Emily had always insisted on managing our shared finances. She claimed she was better at it, more disciplined. That was probably true, but it also meant she assumed I'd never think to question her. That afternoon, she called me. "My credit card was declined," she said, her voice tight. "Do you know why?" "No, I lied." "It must be a mistake," she continued. "I'll call the bank." I ended the call before she could say more. 2 days later, I got another message from Marcus. Her firm has opened an internal investigation. She's been suspended pending review. When I returned home that evening, Emily was sitting in the living room, phone in hand, her expression tight with worry. "What did you do?" she demanded. I set my briefcase down. "I don't know what you're talking about. Someone sent my company records of every transfer I ever made. You think that's a coincidence?" I shrugged. Her voice rose. "They're accusing me of theft, Mark. They froze my corporate accounts. If this goes public, maybe you should have thought about that before you started moving money," I said. She stood there stunned. For the first time since we'd met, she looked genuinely afraid. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. I shouldn't have gone out that night. But you're blowing this out of proportion. No, I corrected. You blew up your own life. I'm just refusing to clean up the mess. Her eyes searched mine for something, sympathy, maybe, or hesitation. But she found nothing. The next day, her lawyer called me. He wanted to discuss the possibility of a legal separation without publicity. I didn't agree to anything. I wanted Emily to sit in the uncertainty for a while, to understand that her control over me and over the image she'd built was gone. Over the next week, everything she valued started slipping away. Her reputation at work. Her financial safety net. The illusion that she could step out of our marriage whenever she felt restless and come back without consequences. She tried several times to explain herself, to claim that none of it was personal. That her one night with someone else was about her insecurity, not a rejection of me. But the words didn't matter anymore. One evening she came home and found me packing boxes in the bedroom. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice unsteady. "Preparing," I said. "For what?" "For you to understand that you can't betray someone and expect their help when it falls apart." Her face paled. "You're ending this." "I'm finishing what you started," I said simply. She didn't try to argue again. For the first time in our marriage, Emily was silent. The week after Emily's suspension felt like watching the collapse of something that had once seemed permanent. Every day, a new consequence landed. On Monday, her employer announced a formal audit. Her manager called to tell her she was barred from entering the building until further notice. That same morning, she discovered the firm had frozen her retirement accounts. She tried to call human resources, but they wouldn't give her any answers over the phone. By Tuesday, her corporate credit card was canceled. She stood in the kitchen holding the letter, reading it twice as if hoping the words would change. "This isn't happening," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "They can't just assume I did something wrong." "They're not assuming," I said without looking up from my laptop. "They have evidence." She glared at me, but she didn't deny it. Wednesday, she tried to schedule a meeting with her firm's compliance officer. She came home visibly shaken, though she tried to hide it behind a stiff posture and clipped tone. "They think I used company funds for personal expenses," she announced. "Did you?" I asked. "That's not the point," she snapped. "It was never enough to matter. Everyone does it. You buy a meal, you forget which card you used. I closed my laptop and finally looked at her. If it was so trivial, why hide it in another account? She didn't answer. Thursday was when it really started to sink in that she couldn't talk her way out. She spent hours on the phone, first with lawyers, then with her bank, then with her parents. No one could fix it. No one could reassure her this was just a misunderstanding. Friday morning, the HR department called to inform her she was terminated, effective immediately. She sat at the table holding her phone long after the call ended. I came into the kitchen for coffee and she looked up at me like she was seeing a stranger. "They fired me," she whispered. "I know," I said. "You knew this was coming," she accused. "Yes." She set the phone down carefully. "You're behind this." "I'm behind making sure you were accountable. Everything else you did yourself." She stood abruptly and walked into the bedroom. I heard the closet door slam, then silence. I didn't follow her. Over the weekend, she tried to act like she still had some control over her life. She called former colleagues, hoping someone would speak on her behalf. She left voicemails for her boss. She started drafting a statement to set the record straight. But none of it mattered. The damage was done. On Sunday night, she finally said the words I'd been expecting. "I think we should see a counselor," she announced from the doorway. "This doesn't have to end our marriage." I turned in my chair. "You think a counselor will fix this? It could help us process it. Maybe we can rebuild trust." I studied her for a moment. Even then, she couldn't say she was sorry without conditions. She wanted to salvage her life, not because she regretted what she'd done, but because she was losing everything that made her feel secure. "No," I said. She took a step closer. "Mark, No," I repeated. "I don't want therapy. I don't want reconciliation. I want you to leave." Her face tightened. "You can't just decide that." "I can and I am." She stared at me like she couldn't believe it. "You think you're punishing me," she said slowly. "But you're only proving my point. You were never willing to fight for us." I stood up and faced her. "You don't get to reframe this. You walked out to sleep with someone else. You hid money. You lied for years. And now you want to pretend it's my fault for not forgiving you instantly." Her mouth opened, but no words came. "The truth is, you never respected me," I went on. "You never thought there would be a price for the way you treated me. Now you're shocked to learn you're not immune to consequences." For once, she didn't try to argue. She turned away and walked into the bedroom. That night, I moved my things into the guest room. The next morning, she tried one last time to pretend she still had options. "I've called an attorney," she announced as I was packing documents into a box. "If you want a divorce, you'll have to fight me in court." "I'm prepared for that," I said calmly. "You think you can just walk away," she hissed. "You think this is over?" I didn't answer her. By noon, the process servers delivered the official notice. She signed for it without speaking, then closed herself in the bedroom again. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was clarity. She would never take responsibility. She would never apologize in a way that wasn't transactional. Late that night, I got a call from Marcus. "Everything's finalized," he said. "Your assets are secure. Your accounts are separate. She can't touch anything now." "Thank you," I said. "You okay?" "I'm fine." After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room, listening to the quiet. This was the moment I'd expected to feel some regret. But I didn't. I felt lighter. Emily's collapse wasn't only about her career or her money. It was about the realization she no longer had the power she believed was permanent. She thought she could humiliate me and I'd still stand by her side because she deemed herself indispensable. She was wrong. The following morning, she tried again. She stood in the hallway, her voice softer. "We don't have to do this," she said. "Yes, we do," I replied. Her shoulders slumped. I picked up the last of my files and walked past her without another word. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. The day after she signed the papers, Emily tried to pretend the divorce was only a threat. She spent the morning on the phone with a lawyer she'd used for corporate work, hoping to find a way to stall the process. But every conversation ended the same. Her options were limited and the evidence of her misconduct was too strong to bury. I didn't stay in the apartment long after filing. I moved into a furnished rental in Midtown while I finalized everything. Emily stayed behind, surrounded by the life she thought she'd always have. She didn't understand yet that most of it no longer belonged to her. When she called me, she didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked how much I intended to take. She wanted to negotiate terms, divide assets in a way that would let her keep the Tribeca condo, maybe retain a few accounts. She offered compromise, but only because she had no leverage. She still hadn't grasped that she'd already lost. I let her talk. When she finished, I told her plainly that I wouldn't be giving her anything she hadn't earned. I wasn't going to let her keep what she'd built on deception. Her voice went flat. "You're trying to ruin me." "No," I said. "You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you can't pretend otherwise." She hung up. A few days later, her former employer released a statement confirming her termination. The story didn't hit the major news outlets, but it spread fast in finance circles. By the end of the week, she'd called or emailed every contact she had, hoping someone would offer her a reference or a fresh start. No one did. Marcus kept me updated. He forwarded me an email chain between her and her HR department. She was pleading for them to reconsider, promising to repay every dollar she'd diverted. But the decision was final. She was labeled untrustworthy. No reputable firm was going to take a chance on her. Emily tried to salvage her image next. She posted a carefully worded statement on LinkedIn about taking time to reflect and regroup. The comments were polite but restrained. No one publicly supported her. The message was clear, her credibility was gone. Meanwhile, the financial side of her life fell apart. Her private account in Delaware was frozen during the investigation. The joint accounts had already been legally separated. The condo was in my name, financed by my bonuses and equity. I had the paperwork to prove it. She could contest it in court, but she'd signed enough documents over the years that her case was weak. One afternoon, I stopped by the apartment to collect the last of my things. Emily was there. She didn't look up when I came in. She was sitting at the dining table with her laptop open, scrolling through job postings. She had a legal pad filled with notes, lists of recruiters, companies she planned to contact, strategies to repair her reputation. Even then, she couldn't admit it was over. "You think this will last?" she said without lifting her eyes. "You think I'm going to stay down forever?" "I don't care," I said. "You've made your point," she went on. "Congratulations. You won." "This wasn't a game," I said quietly. She closed her laptop and finally looked at me. Her eyes were flat, exhausted. "You really think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "I think I'm honest about who I am." "You're not." She said nothing more. I picked up the last box and walked out. In the weeks that followed, she called less. The messages shifted tone from anger to desperation to resignation. She tried to remind me of everything we'd shared, all the years we'd built something together. She asked me to reconsider the settlement, saying she couldn't afford to lose everything. But every time I thought about the night she stood in front of me and announced she was leaving to sleep with another man. Not because she was unhappy, not because we were in crisis, but because she needed to feel wanted. And she assumed I'd just accept it. When the final paperwork arrived, I signed it without hesitation. My attorney called to confirm the divorce would be finalized within a month. The last of our shared property would be transferred. There was nothing left to discuss. Emily tried one final tactic. She showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant buzzed my phone, her voice cautious. "Your ex-wife is here. She says she needs a few minutes." I almost told her to send Emily away, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped into the hall. Emily was standing there with her purse clutched to her side. She looked smaller somehow. She'd lost the practiced confidence that used to fill every room she entered. I'm not here to fight, she said quickly. Then why are you here? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I guess I thought you might still care. I didn't respond. She swallowed hard. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I didn't think you'd be capable of this. I didn't think you'd be so cold. You never really knew me, I said. She nodded, her face pale. I guess I didn't. For a long moment, we stood there. She was waiting for something. Maybe a sign I'd changed my mind. Maybe proof I still felt connected to her. But I had nothing left to offer. Goodbye, Emily, I said. Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned and walked out without looking back. When she was gone, I felt the tension leave my shoulders. There was no relief, no satisfaction, just finality. A week later, I received notice that the divorce was legally complete. She was no longer my responsibility, no longer part of my story. She was just a person who'd made a choice and discovered too late that some choices cost more than you expect. Marcus called that evening. It's done, he said simply. I know. You okay? I'm better than I've been in a long time. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. He understood that what Emily never did. Trust, once broken, doesn't return just because you want it to. It only ends one way. The divorce was finalized quietly. A few signatures on a stack of documents that reduced over a decade of shared history to a legal transaction. The last piece of our life together vanished without ceremony. No arguments. No appeals. Just a certified envelope and a phone call from my lawyer confirming it was over. After it was done, I moved out of New York. I had no reason to stay in the city where every street reminded me of what we'd been, or what I thought we were. I accepted a position in Chicago, a lateral move with enough distance to let me start over. My new office was smaller, but I didn't mind. I'd stopped caring about appearances. People kept asking me if I felt triumphant, if watching Emily lose everything had satisfied me. The truth was simpler. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Emily sent a single message after the settlement cleared. I hope you're happy. I never replied. There was nothing left to say. Marcus visited a few weeks later. He found me unpacking books in my new place. We shared a drink, and he asked the question I'd been expecting. Do you ever regret how far you took it? I thought about it carefully. Not because I doubted my answer, but because I wanted to be precise. No, I said. I regret that it had to happen, but I don't regret making sure she faced consequences. He nodded without judgment. Some people will say you went too far. Those people have never been betrayed like that, I said. He didn't argue. Word eventually reached me about what had happened to her. After the termination, she tried to get hired by several smaller firms. No one would touch her. The rumor about her misconduct had spread, and she had no allies willing to vouch for her integrity. She tried to sell the story that it had all been a misunderstanding, but the evidence was too detailed, too credible. Her Delaware account remained frozen. The fines for misuse of corporate funds were steep. When she realized how much she owed, she liquidated most of what little she'd retained to cover legal costs. The Tribeca condo she'd once believed she'd keep had already been sold months before, the proceeds divided by the court. She ended up in a rental in Queens, a place that cost a fraction of what she used to spend on dinners out. At first, I expected to feel satisfaction picturing her in that new life, smaller and humbler. But as time passed, I realized what I actually felt was distance. She was no longer a presence in my thoughts, just a name attached to a lesson I'd learned the hardest way. One day, almost 6 months after the divorce, she called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Her voice sounded different. Quiet, stripped of the confident edge she used to wear like armor. I don't know why I'm calling, she admitted after a long pause. I guess I thought I owed you something. You don't owe me anything, I said. I do, she insisted. I owe you an apology. Not for what I did because I can't change that, but for thinking you'd always forgive me. I told myself that honesty was enough, that if I didn't lie, it made it acceptable. It didn't, I said calmly. I know, she whispered. I lost everything. My job, my reputation. You didn't lose me, I corrected. You threw me away. She didn't respond to that. I never thought you'd be the one to end it, she said eventually. I always assumed you'd wait for me to come back. I know, I said. That was the problem. Another silence. Then she asked the last question she ever would. Do you hate me? No, I said honestly. I don't hate you. I just don't think about you anymore. There was a tiny sound on the line, maybe a breath, maybe a sob she tried to swallow. Then she hung up. I sat for a long time after, feeling no impulse to call her back. That was when I knew I was done carrying her choices. In Chicago, my life slowly took on a new shape. The apartment became a home. I joined a running club. I saw friends without feeling like I had to justify why my marriage had ended. When people asked if I was married, I simply said I used to be. Nobody pressed for details. I never told anyone the full story. Partly because it didn't matter anymore. Partly because I didn't want to keep reliving it. Betrayal only keeps power over you if you let it. Letting go was the final act she never anticipated and the one that cost her most. Sometimes people think revenge is about proving a point, that you show them how much they've hurt you by striking back harder. But it wasn't like that. For me, it was about balance. Emily spent years believing she could cross every line and face no consequences. My only goal was to correct that mistake. I never felt compelled to humiliate her. I didn't need to. Her downfall came from her own decisions. All I did was remove the safety nets she assumed would always be there. In the end, she wasn't destroyed by me. She was destroyed by the arrogance that made her believe she was immune to accountability. And me? I built something new. A career without the constant stress of wondering who I was coming home to. A life without hidden compromises. A sense of self-respect I hadn't realized I'd lost. If there was a lesson, it was simple: trust is a choice, and so is betrayal. When you choose to betray, you forfeit the right to be trusted. No explanation changes that. No apology rewrites it. People sometimes asked if I'd ever consider seeing her again. I told them the truth, I wouldn't. Not because I hated her, but because she'd become a person I no longer recognized. Freedom wasn't punishing her. Freedom was understanding I never had to be part of her story again.